All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, June 8th, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Thursday, everyone. It is a sunny 62 degrees and very lovely here in upstate New York. So where do we leave off on Tuesday? We titled the show Human Blueprints, AI, DNA, skull, robot skull drill, reanima project, and death. And yeah, we talked about a lot of crazy stuff. Now, interestingly, yesterday, as I tried to connect, Skype had some issues connecting, left me in forever connect with no sound, no connection, and no disconnection. So sadly, I could not make it online live yesterday, but in my place, I was able to put on a rebroadcast back from, I believe it was August of 2016. It was an interview of Clint Richardson and Patrick Jordan on Shali's show on Sunday morning here at 10 a.m. called Cold Reality Radio. They are on as guests often. Sometimes Clint even guest hosts. But one of the things that I found listening to them talk about their red button issues is that they share a lot of some of the same views and have come to some of the same conclusions that I have when we start looking at this mad science gone mad and where this technology has come from. And we looked at that article from 1982 about Fort Detrick. And they talked to the, I don't know what he was, general or colonel in charge, and he had discussed the history and how our biowarfare program, even though it was, quote unquote, ended by Nixon when he inked that agreement, we still maintained a defensive posture, all in the name of protecting you with vaccines. There was lots of mad science research going on, but we found out that back even in those days, they'd already been tinkering with genetic modification down long, dark hallways with screams and bloody doors. I don't know. I just add that, but it's a good visual. But it makes me think of the X-Files, underground buried trains or something in the desert. But the very plain fact of the matter is that there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on that has been taxpayer funded that we don't have any clue about what's really happening. And now it's all starting to come to light with some of these new technologies, CRISPR in particular, and these programming languages for cells, and they can go in and flip switches on and off. You know, I had been talking about that flavor saver tomato back when I first started to have issues, immune issues, and food allergy issues. And it was back in, I would say, the mid-90s. I was in college. Maybe it was the early 90s. I was in college, just getting out of college. I was working in the restaurant, so I would have sandwiches with tomatoes on them quite frequently. And I started breaking out in hives, head to toe. And then we found out years later, and I'm talking like 20 plus years later, that there was a GMO item that came out on the market. And this, where did I just see? 1988, 1992. Looks like there were some publications about it. This is titled The Flavor Saver Tomato, an early example of RNAi technology. Now, you know, when we first hopped on to some of this genetic modification, it was looking at RNAi and some of the things that not only had Monsanto had on their yearly docket for technologies they were going to tackle, but we also found out that scientists had started tinkering with RNAi, looking at genetically modifying bacteria and things of that nature. And then, lo and behold, came Georgie Porgy Church with his CRISPR right on up behind some of the things that they were utilizing, some of the tools that they were utilizing in order to do that. Camille, one of the listeners that sends me lots of links. Hi, Camille. had told me that there was a video out there by Wired Magazine, and I found it yesterday, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was a geneticist who took 5 different levels of explanation, starting with a preschooler all the way up to a PhD level researcher. And in each of those 5 different people that he discussed CRISPR with, he came up with 5 different ways to describe the technology and have a conversation. And it was beyond frightening as to, how they talk about this technology. Of course, there were some discussions about ethical issues, and we have looked at a lot of that. We have also looked, and it didn't come up in conversation at all, I noticed. We have also looked now that they are raising some flags about this CRISPR technology, that I love the way the headlines read it, there are hundreds now of potential mutations in one instance of CRISPR, and that was with a genetic form of blindness that they were trying to treat in mice or rats. I think it might have been rats. And yes, it cured their blindness, but there were many, many off-target gene mutations that had happened that they hadn't necessarily been looking for had they not sequenced the entire genome. They have artificial intelligence that is sequencing the genomes on the back end, but they are only programming certain areas of the genome where most likely you'd have a mutation to have it look at it. But they discover now when they look at the entire genome that there's lots more going on than they ever potentially anticipated, and that could be a problem. But, we go back to even the 80s, so 1982 for that New York Times story about Fort Detrick. And then we find out that Flavor Saver tomatoes, they had started tinkering with edible vaccines and genetically modifying bananas, rice, I don't remember what else, lettuces, a bunch of other things back in those days. But Dr. Arnston, with his edible vaccines, really kind of tipped me off that there was some connection between genetically modifying foods and some of the mad science gone mad that is going into vaccinations, lots of the transgenic type insertions from other species, and then injecting them or somehow getting them into our bodies. I mean, if you did not listen to the encore broadcast that I aired yesterday in this time slot because I couldn't get on air, I highly recommend it. And to that one person that gave it a thumbs down, I'm going to give you a big question mark because I don't get it. Just because I wasn't on air doesn't mean that it wasn't worthy of your listening. I found that, especially now after all we've learned and all these things that we've dug into, listening to it again gave me a new clarity as to what they were actually outlaying. And we've all come to the same conclusions, it seems. And it's very horrifying. If you then take these tangents as to where we are headed, and we started on Tuesday really kind of getting down the path now of this integration of artificial intelligence in all of this programming of life. Remember, these guys are the architects. We had titled the show on Monday, Architects of Life, DNA Ownership, Fine Print, and CRISPR Evolution. That's kind of the same sort of thing that Clint and Patrick had discussed is once they start tinkering with our DNA, remember, once we become genetically modified, just like has happened in the plant kingdom, in the bacterial kingdom, once they start changing nature, it becomes patentable. We found out that Ancestry.com, when you check that box and spit into a tube and submit your $99, you give them exclusive forever rights to do what they will with your DNA, that and your future progeny. That's a horrifying concept. And you have to remember, this is only the beginning. As they are mixing and matching, and then we found out IARPA, the CIA's version of DARPA, is working with Georgie Porgy Church on some of their brain initiative called Microns, and a silicon-based semiconductor company to integrate technology into biology. DARPA is working with Georgie Porgy Church as well for manufacturing and all kinds of splicing and dicing of cells, creating artificial life forms. They are also working with Craig Ventnor, yes, the father of synthetic biology. And don't forget, Georgie Porgy Church also has put together a consortium of scientists for creating a synthetic human genome. Our future is looking a little scary, and they keep saying, shh, don't worry about it, Johnny. It'll be okay. But in the meantime, we read about things like a few days ago with robot brains that can be controlled by E. coli. Georgie Porgy Church fully reconfigured E. coli back a few years ago. They were able to figure out what is necessary for life and what can be genetically modified and programmed. And now they're putting them into a robot body where they can learn and take on higher level functionality as if they were an animal. The stalk, pause, strike behavior, which is even more frightening in the being of a bacteria, especially one that can become virulent. But, as they are imbuing artificial intelligence with all of this research that they are discovering in the lab as they find the chinks in the human armor, we have looked quite extensively at IBM Watson. A lot of things that they are doing with Watson in the name of oncology and in genomics, being able to target cancers from a genetic level just by scanning large databases of DNA and illness and keeping up on feeds and the latest research. White-collar jobs, such as an oncologist, are going to be replaced at some point in the not-too-distant future. Well, another story. This one is out of the Globe and Mail. Artificial intelligence takes on white-collar duties June 5th, 2017. Maybe it is unfair for some people to think tax lawyers have the personality of a robot, but Benjamin Arlisle considers that to be a plus. Remember, we already found out about Ross, the AI lawyer, and that again is back-ending to IBM's Watson. We have AI taking over customer service. We're going to have robots that'll be running fast food restaurants. We also found out that we're going to have robots picking apples in California, as well as robots drilling holes in our skulls in 2.5 minutes instead of 2 hours. Well, now a Yale-trained lawyer himself, Mr. Arlisle's Toronto firm called Blue Jay Legal, harnessed artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence to help lawyers and their clients work their way through the complications of tax laws. It is a way, he says, to supercharge the legal system. I mean, we're going to be giving it all up to the machine here, people. This is what I'm trying to outline for you. There's a travesty going on right now in our government, and they are trying to prove that our puny human emotions and our fragile memories and our fragile brains and our inability to remember lots of things that come at us at a very fast pace are what is ailing us right now. But if we put the super intelligent machine in charge, they'll be able to help us. Don't worry about it. They know what they're doing, and they are not influenced by any of the biological foibles that we are. And as people like Georgie Porgy Church are working on reverse engineering the brain by barcoding neuron by neuron, we have Google, IBM, and Microsoft all working, as well as Amazon, all working and making big pulsating brains in the cloud. Add to that China as well with Beidou. Probably lots of other universities out there that we might not even know of yet. We have a new cyber war genetic war, bio war, technology war going on. That because we integrate technology into everything we do, we don't realize that it potentially can be used as a weapon. Because nobody's done that to a large terror scale yet, but it's coming, people. They've been warning us about that. They've been warning us about pandemics now, last month or so. They've been warning us about internet apocalypses for the last, I'd say almost a year now, since the Cyber Grand Challenge that DARPA had. Carnegie Mellon won with the shape-shifting immune system of the internet that is to come. And we have to remember that as we migrate more and more to become part of this Internet of Things, the state, I guess you could call them, and that would include all the players, not just government players, but healthcare, tech industry, rich tech billionaires, are all going to get their hands on a piece of the pie. And the pie is going to be you and me and our genetic material and the manipulation and control of our biological systems as if we were just another node on the network. They'll be capturing our data and then putting it into some sort of analytical backend to be able to decode what our moves are going to be in the future and what our trajectory could potentially be. We found out that there already was an AI that they are using in the UK to be able to predict how long a patient may live as based upon their symptoms and their biostatistics. This isn't going to be much longer utilizing this medical industrial complex. It's all going to be about lowering costs and surveilling the population to make sure we don't have any lunatics out there. That will give them the control to take over. It'll all be in your best interest. Shh. We found out NATO also wants to reduce costs by giving AI decision-making capabilities, because it costs too much. And Trump came down and said, hey, you guys aren't doing what you should to help us out defraying the costs. NATO is now looking at getting bigger, better, faster, cheaper by employing an artificial intelligence to advise them on what decisions they should make. AI can also learn to spot the face of a lawyer. A lawyer. No, I didn't mean that. A liar. Talking about lawyers, AI lawyers. But no, they can now spot the face of a liar. We have been looking at micro expressions and how only trained individuals were able to really do that and find tells when they were asking you questions. So whether or not you were hiding something, well, now they have an AI that potentially do that. Facial recognition technology is being used at airports, but it is premature, this story says, out of Ars Technica UK, and not the way to go. Well, that's a good thing, but I bet you it's coming anyway. In 2009, a 22-year-old student, Nicholas George, was going through a checkpoint at Philadelphia International Airport when Transportation Security Administration agents pulled him aside. Search of his luggage turned up flashcards with English and Arabic words, and George was handcuffed, detained 4 hours, and questioned by the FBI. Welcome to Philly. George had been singled out by a behavioral detection officer, people who are trained in picking out gestures and facial expressions that supposedly betray malicious intentions. So remember, we talked about that years ago. If you look sweaty or if you kept looking at your watch, you were looking around nervously, those would be things that the malicious intention officers would detect as part of a U.S. program called Screening Passengers by Observation Technique, more affectionately known as SPOT. But the officers were wrong in singling him out, and George was released without charges the same day. As the incident may suggest, SPOT produced very little information throughout its decade-long history, And in light of the technique's failures, some computer scientists have recently concluded that a machine could do a better job with this task than humans. And that's a scary thing. Like, even the vaccines and looking at some of the old school issues with vaccines such as mercury and that type of thing, don't worry about it, because problem, reaction, solution, they always come out with something better. That's where this shape-shifting immune system for people and being able to manipulate your immune system on the fly through things such as living therapeutics are going to come in as a cleaner solution than old school vaccinations. And I think we should be careful what we ask for. Anyway, the machine techniques they intend to use share a surprising history with Spot's training procedures. In fact, both can be traced back to the same man, Paul Ekman, now an emeritus professor of psychology at the University of California, which again is interesting because Manit Napolitano is the president of the University of California system. Ekman and his fellow psychologist Wallace F. Friesen were originally interested in whether nonverbal cues could betray a liar. And in 1969, they published a paper titled Nonverbal Leakage and Clues to Deception that considered whether liars involuntarily communicated their deception. The face, they concluded, was equipped to, quote, lie at the most and betray at the most as well. And facial clues haven't been the only window into deception over the years. Now, we found out gait as well. Alternative ideas for lie detection include polygraph, a device measuring your heart rate, skin conductivity, and capillary dilation. There's also EEG and fMRI brain scans, eye tracking, and voice analysis. But analyzing facial expressions seemed to be the least invasive, and didn't need expensive equipment. So both psychologists decided to give the human face a much closer examination. Generally, all facial and effect recognition algorithms follow three basic steps. They begin with finding a face in an input picture or video, and perhaps the most popular today is the method proposed in 2001. It is an algorithm that searches the input of a picture for groups of pixels arranged in patterns indicative of a human face. Eyes are usually darker than the cheeks. Nose and bridge are usually brighter than the eyes, and so on. And if the patterns are the right orientation, the voila Jones algorithm labels it a face. Facial recognition software next moves on to facial feature extraction. One approach relies on discerning geometric features like eyes and the line of the mouth and calculating relative distances and angles between them. Another approach is based on appearance feature extraction, and this relies on a large training set. Whenever a new picture is thrown in an algorithm, it calculates the distance between the newcomer and each of the pictures that it has already been trained on. Both techniques end up with a feature vector, a numerical value corresponding to the way we look, along with pretty much every silly face that we can come up with. Oh my God. So you can't run, you can't hide, just put a sheet over your head. This can be used for identification, where the software decides if a face under consideration belongs to a given person. It probably gives you percentages. But they also found that there are signs of deception. There's a world of applications for affecting recognition nowadays. An MIT spinoff called Effectiva, founded by Rosalind Pickard, offers AI for recognition of emotions to entertainment and advertising industries. Research on emotion is underway at Facebook as well. And Apple bought Emotion, which is an effect recognition startup about a year or so ago. But all this early software is designed to catch basic facial expression, and it usually indicates one of six basic emotions. That would be anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, and surprise. And there is no expression for deception. Well, they concluded that micro expressions were involuntary. Ding, I told you, of a person's internal state, and they lasted just 1/5 to 1/25 of a second before being suppressed. They also found that untrained observers scored only slightly better in the chance of recognizing these. So we developed a micro expression training tool, a program intended to train law enforcement officers in catching micro expressions during interrogations. Trained interrogators achieved 70% accuracy. And among the computer vision community, they began to believe that a carefully designed AI algorithm could even do better. Well, to add insult to injury, researchers have created an AI that could read and react to emotions. And I had to laugh because the picture for this one was the face of a sheep getting a 230-point facial recognition looking for emotions. University of Cambridge researchers have developed an AI algorithm that can assess how much pain a sheep is in by reading its facial expressions. Now just imagine, I just thought, how horrible is this? How are they gauging the pain unless they're putting the sheep in pain for the experiment? This system can facilitate the early detection of a painful condition in livestock, and eventually it could be used as a basis for AIs that read emotions on human faces. Now remember, that was really one of the things that they had talked about in the very beginning, to get humans to accept AI as a daily interaction would be for AI to be able to interact and respond to what you are feeling, to be more human. One of today's most popular artificially intelligent androids comes from the TV series, and I haven't seen this at all, Marvel's Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Those of you who followed the latest season stories probably love or hate this artificial intelligence by now. And one of the most interesting things about this fictional AI character is that he can read people's emotions. Thanks to the research from the University of Cambridge, this is AI's ability might soon make the jump from sci-fi to reality. First step in creating such a system is to train the AI on simpler facial expressions and just one specific emotion or feeling. And to that end, the team focused on using a machine learning algorithm to figure out if a sheep is in pain, and this week presented their research to the IEEE International Conference on Automatic Face and Gesture Recognition in Washington, D.C. And this is a story, June 2nd, 2017, out of Futurism.com. The system they developed, called the Sheep Pain Facial Expression Scale, was trained using a data set of 500 sheep photographs to learn how to identify 5 distinct features of a sheep's face when the animal is in pain. The algorithm then ranks the feature on a scale of 1 to 10 to determine the severity of the pain. I could see this used in hospitals to kind of roll this out, couldn't you? Like a big eye over every bed. An early test showed that this system could estimate pain levels with an 80% accuracy. The co-author of the program explained the interesting part is that you can see a clear analogy between these actions in the sheep's face and similar facial actions in humans when they are in pain. And there is a similarity in the terms of the muscles in their faces as well as in our faces. Additional developments could lead to systems that are able to accurately recognize and react to human emotions, further blurring the line between natural and artificial intelligences. Now, this is a pretty frightening thought because everyone and their brother are dumping money into AI right now, and they want it to transform not only daily operations in the name of manufacturing and how they do business, but eventually our lives as well, whether we like it or not. Europe's latest billion-dollar startup wants to build the Matrix for real. Originally established to build ultra-realistic video games, the firm now plans to simulate the world in silico. A London-based startup called Improbable is living up to its name. The firm announced today, May 12th, 2017, out of technologyreview.com, that it has secured $502 million of investment funding from Japanese tech conglomerate SoftBank. Hey, I haven't heard of them in a while. Valuing it over $1 billion. And as the BBC notes, it is one of the largest ever investments made in an early stage startup in Europe, where venture capital cash flows a little less easily than it does in Silicon Valley. But why the fuss? Well, as they have reported in the past, Improbable was originally founded by two computer science graduates of, again, where? The same university as the sheep pain detector, the University of Cambridge, who wanted to build an ultra-detailed virtual world for video games. But the pair soon realized that the same technology could be put to use building tools that could be used to simulate the world around us, and even entire cities. In theory, it's easy to model, for instance, a street with some cars, buses, and pedestrians in order to see how they all interact. But scaling that up in order to understand how London's entire population might get around in the face of public transit outages would be way too complex for most systems to handle. And yet, that's just the kind of problem that Improbable thinks it can simulate, using a technique that splits up massive simulation and farms it out to thousands of public servers, like, I don't know, ones that maybe Amazon or Google have for lease. I mean, we've talked about how large they're getting and all these big cloud services and AI services that they are offering for $29.95 a month. That's exactly what this is allowing people like this to do. It has already been able to simulate entire cities. The company claims to have produced the most complex urban models in the world. And guys, once they get our behavioral monitoring down to a T and everyone is genetically sequenced, they'll just plug all that into the system and they'll be able to tell with probably an 80% probability what you're going to do faced with a certain set of circumstances. In fact, Improbable is ratcheting up its own expectation of what it might be able to achieve as a result. As this excellence feature about the company by Wired UK reports, its CEO, Herman Nanula, says that his firm now, quote, basically wants to build the Matrix, unquote. It's a bit of hyperbole, of course, but the company does plan to create such realistic simulations of a real world that military officials, I bet NATO too, city leaders, and anyone else with fiendishly complex systems with millions of moving parts could play out the impact of their actions with unprecedented accuracy. Clearly, at least one deep-pocketed investor believes that it can deliver on that vision. So put on a seatbelt because it gets even better. DARPA is now working toward machines that improve with experience. New program seeks to develop the foundations for systems that might someday, quote unquote, learn much in the way that biological organisms do. Yes. Self-driving taxis, cell phones that react appropriately to spoken requests, computers that outcompete world-class chess Go players. And artificial intelligence is becoming part and parcel of our technological landscape, but not only in the civilian and commercial worlds, but also within the Department of Defense, where AI is finding application in such areas as cybersecurity, ding, and dynamic logistics planning. But even the smartest of the current top AI systems can't stack up against adaptive biological intelligence. And these highly prolific examples of AI can rely on clever programming and extensive training data sets, but a framework referred to as machine learning, which is to accomplish seemingly intelligent tasks until their program or training sets have been specifically accounted for. The situation or circumstance, machine learning systems are stymied, unable to determine what to do next. Well, don't worry about it because it is a far cry from what even simple biological systems can do as they adapt and learn from the experience. But it is light years short of how, say, human motorists build on experience as they encounter dynamic vagaries of the real world of driving. Well, this is where DARPA's Lifelong Learning Machines, more affectionately known as the L2M program, comes in. The technical goal of L2M is to develop next-generation machine learning technologies that can learn from new simulations. Now, we found out both Elon Musk and Google are already working on programs such as that, where they have two AIs competing against each other by simulating scenarios and then learning from the outcomes. Well, yeah, it's coming. It's coming. So this is the Lifelong Learning Machine program. Inverse Magazine, Inverse.com, put out a story March 21st, 2017. DARPA's Lifetime Learning Project will let AI grow up. DARPA is working on a new machine learning technology that could let a future artificial intelligence grow up, learning from its experiences over the entirety of its unnatural life. Essentially, DARPA wants to turn every interaction, ding, 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 the AI has as an opportunity to collect data. And isn't that what they're already doing? The Lifetime Learning Machines initiative goals wouldn't be surveillance, though that's certainly a concern, but rather improving artificial intelligence by exposing it to new data and experiences and letting it learn from them, just like a biological brain. The project's leaders call this a new computing paradigm that could supplant classical AI coding, in which knowledge and behaviors must be specified in advance. Through the 4-year program to let AI become, quote, responsive and adaptive collaborators with humans is still getting started, the machine learning goals for its contributors are clear: to allow AIs to learn from incidental experiences, and these autonomous machines will have to learn not just from success and mistakes, but also from observed successes and mistakes made by other actors in the world around them. See, they are starting to learn their place in the universe and to be able to determine what is them and what is outside of them as an external influence. That should be very frightening. And then not only that, but to be able to learn from it. This is that next step that, again, will probably go along with a whimper and nobody will even notice. But this is the next step to the displacement of humanity 1.0 as the rulers of the known universe. This sort of vicarious learning will either require or slowly build a very basic sense of self. Ding, there you go. A self-driving car would apply lessons from having watched another car crash, but not necessarily from having watched a human being walked into a wall. An AI lifetime learner needs very general rules for what information to incorporate and make it more unpredictable, but also give it the potential to adapt to totally unforeseen scenarios. However, even humans don't totally learn in an open environment, unstructured way. Even before parental guidance enters the picture, we have built-in mechanisms to take inherently unstructured learning, and our brain tends to make structure of it. The most obvious example is pain. Again, that pain button. Toddlers don't need to learn to dislike pain, so there is a neurological basis for the fact that behaviors that lead to pain are less likely to be repeated even by babies. Human learning processes aren't entirely unsupervised either, and they work in part thanks to a reward and punishment set up by evolution. So look out. I know that we had already read about at some point being able to give computers a pain sensation. And that would be kind of frightening. But here's something even more frightening out of MIT Technology Review. The date on this is April 11th, 2017. The dark secret at the heart of AI. And this is one of the reasons this is very important. I think we should all be paying attention. The dark secret at the heart of AI is that no one really knows how the most advanced algorithms actually do what they do. and that could be a bit of a problem. Last year, a strange self-driving car released onto the quiet roads of Mammoth City, New Jersey. The experimental vehicle developed by researchers at chipmaker NVIDIA, and we've talked about them before. Their GPU, the graphics processing unit that used to be used for high-end 3D and gaming, is now being used for building supercomputing capabilities with AI. Didn't look any different from any other autonomous car, but it was unlike anything demonstrated by Google, Tesla, or General Motors, and it showed the rising, powerful abilities of artificial intelligence. The car did not follow a single instruction provided by an engineer or programmer. Instead, it relied entirely on an algorithm that had taught itself to drive by watching a human do it. Getting a car to drive this way was an unprecedented feat, but it also is a bit unsettling since it isn't completely clear how the car had made its decisions. Information from the vehicle's sensor goes straight into a huge network of artificial neurons that process the data and then deliver the commands required to operate the steering wheel, the brakes, and other systems. The result seems to match the responses you'd expect from a human driver. The result seems to match the response that you would expect if you had taught someone to drive. But what if one day it did something unexpected, like crash into a tree or sat at a green light? Well, as things stand right now, it might be difficult to find out why. The system is just so complicated that even the engineers who designed it may struggle to isolate the reason for any single action. And you can't ask it. There is no obvious way to design such a system that could then always explain why it did something. And this mysterious mind of a vehicle points to a looming issue with the coming of AI. The car's underlying AI technology, known as deep learning, has provided very powerful at solving problems in recent years, and it has been widely developed for tasks like image captioning, voice recognition, and language translation, as well as being able to determine emotion recognition. And now there is hope that these same techniques will be able to diagnose deadly diseases, make multi-million-dollar trading decisions, become a lawyer, we found out, become a tax advisor, and do countless other things that transform entire industries. But this won't happen, or it shouldn't happen, unless we find ways of making techniques like deep learning more understandable to their creators and accountable to their users. Otherwise, it'll be hard to predict when failures might occur, and inevitably they will. And that's one reason that NVIDIA's car is still experimental. Well, phew. Well, get this, June 5th, 2017, out of AAAS publication, Eureka Alert. Researchers aim to make artificial intelligence explain itself. Well, good thing. Out of Oregon State University, 8 computer science professors at Oregon State University's College of Engineering have received a $6.5 million grant from, just one guess, DARPA, to make artificially intelligent space systems like autonomous vehicles and robots more trustworthy. Ha! Yes, push that oxytocin button. The success of deep neural networks and their branch of artificial intelligence has enabled significant advances of autonomous systems that can perceive, learn, decide, and act on their own. And deep learning software aims to mimic the activity in layers of neurons in the neocortex and part of the brain where thinking occurs. The problem is that neural networks can function as a black box, and instead of humans explicitly coding the system's behavior using additional programming, the deep learning in the computer program learns on its own from watching many examples. Potential dangers arise from depending on a system that not even the system's developers fully understand. So now the truth comes out, not only about CRISPR and 1,500 off-target mutations, but now an AI that we don't actually understand how it works or it's teaching itself. Don't those seem like kind of huge issues to you? Because I would say they do to me. So ultimately, this 4-year program grant from DARPA will support the development of a paradigm to look inside of that black box by getting the program to explain to humans how its decisions were reached. Ultimately, we want these explanations to be very natural, translational, to keep the deep network decisions into sentences and visualizations, says Alan Fern, principal investigator for the grant and associate director of the College of Engineering's recently established Collaborative Robotics and Intelligent System Institute. Development of such a system that communicates well with humans require expertise in a number of research fields. In addition to having researchers in artificial intelligence and machine learning on the team, they also include experts in computer vision, human-computer interaction, natural language processing. Oh, I wonder if Kurzweil's going to help them on that, and programming languages. And to begin developing this system, researchers will use real-time strategy games, like StarCraft, to train artificially intelligent, quote-unquote, players with the explanation to their decisions to humans. StarCraft is a staple of computing electronic gaming. Later stages of the project will move onto applications provided by DARPA that may include robotics and unmanned aerial vehicles. Fern says that the research is crucial to the advancement of autonomous and semi-autonomous intelligence systems. Like what? Killer drones? How frightening. Fern says the research is crucial to their advancement, and nobody is going to use the emerging technologies for critical applications until we are able to build some level of trust and have an explanation capability in some important ways of building that trust. Research from Oregon State was selected by DARPA for funding under the highly competitive Explainable Artificial Intelligence Program. Other major universities chosen include, yes, you guessed it, Carnegie Mellon, Georgia Tech, MIT, Stanford, Texas, and University of California at Berkeley. So there you have it. We don't quite know how AI works, yet we are going to imbue all of our systems to run it and maybe even create simulations of your real world with it. Cure cancer. Academy Award nominated filmmakers' next project. Well, that's going to be merging the human brain with AI. Warrior Poets and Futurism Studios are partnering on a new documentary that explores the ways in which human intelligence and artificial intelligence are evolving. This documentary will ultimately investigate how the technology can allow us to augment human intelligence, like Elon Musk and his Neuralink, and unlock the power of the human mind. Over the last few months, the world's most prominent innovators have unveiled a host of projects aimed at decoding the brain and augmenting human intelligence. Mark Zuckerberg announced, with the work that Regina Duggan is doing, that he worked to make a brain interface that will let people communicate via their thoughts. Brian Johnson created Kernel and invested $100 million to make neural code programmable. And last week, Elon Musk finally unveiled Neuralink, the company he founded to correct traumatic brain injuries and increase human intelligence. And he said to compete against the machine. And as a result, we are now fast entering a new age in humanity, one of which will dictate the course of our own evolution. And thanks to the aforementioned projects, the humans that exist a century from now will likely look little like the humans that are alive today. And see, that is where the problem lies, guys. They are directing an evolution that is happening whether we like it or not. And it is not just from a genetic level, though they are going at that as well. But it's also from a brain level, from an intelligence level, and from connecting us to this forever encroaching technocracy that is descending upon us. In order to trace this remarkable stage of evolution, and that is not my words, this is theirs, Futurism.com. Warrior Poets, who are the production company involved in the 2004 Academy Award-nominated film by Morgan Spurlock, and Futurism Studios are creating a new film. The film will be executive produced by Morgan Spurlock and Jeremy Chilnick, and currently called The Untitled Human Intelligence Project. The feature-length documentary will investigate the ways in which human intelligence and artificial intelligence are evolving, focusing specifically on how future technology might allow us to augment our intelligence in ways previous generations never even dreamed of in their worst nightmare. Oh my God. Imagine a future. Oh yes. Imagine a future where we could eliminate depression without taking a pill, instantly learn a foreign language, and communicate with a loved one telepathically. While this may sound like science fiction, it may not be in our not too distant future, says Spurlock, who is directing the film. And of course, such developments come with a host of ethical and theoretical questions that will need to be answered. Yeah, like what really is happening inside of AI and inside of our brains? When this new era of biology comes about, one in which we will have everything from cognitive enhancement, because remember, you have a robot who could drill a hole in your skull in just 2.5 minutes, to the restoration of motor function in a paralyzed patient, prompts the number of compelling questions. For example, if we can ameliorate depression, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, and other disabilities, all brain-related, can our capacity to love, feel empathy, and cooperate also be improved? Uh-oh, this is going to be what they use to get us all to be friends for world peace. Get your implant. If so, by how much? How do we overcome issues related to wealth inequalities and ensure that all people are able to benefit from human augmentation? Well, the first way would be we'd all have to be augmented. In a world of cyborgs, and we've talked about cyborgs, they already have a real-life flying dragonfly that they can direct with a joystick, and some worm brains, and some E. coli, and a moth, and a cockroach. Don't think that we're not going to be next. In the world of cyborgs, what does it mean to be human? Well, this film will interrogate and attempt to answer these most pressing questions, capturing the evolution of AI and human intelligence and giving the audience a glimpse of what the connected evolution of these two intelligences will mean for humanity. Unlike Hollywood dystopias, which are bathed in Terminator-style, unsubstantiated fears of AI, remember, this is a pro-transhumanist publication. This documentary will be rooted in commentary from experts, probably like Kurzweil, in neuroscience and engineering, providing an honest look at what researchers and innovators working in the field have to say about AI and the future of humanity. Johnson's company, Colonel, will be among the dozen or so scientists, ethicists, universities, and private institutions Spurlock and his team will follow throughout the year in this film. And Colonel has opened its doors into the hope to ignite interest in the field, shine a light on the entire neurotech landscape, and facilitate public discourse. as Johnson noted, unlocking the brain is the most consequential advancement in human history. Ding, 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 ding. And I don't think it's just the brain. I think it's the brain and all of biology, people. We've never faced anything like this, at least that we know of, in the evolution of man. And I'm telling you that right now is probably the most pivotal point in the history of our future as a species. And we are being distracted from every perspective not to pay attention to what they are doing behind closed doors. And they are using us as the guinea pigs and our financing to create this technology. And we're just being led along by technological advancement and that dopamine button and that hope to live forever. And that love of technology, to just accept that this is happening, to just accept that we're not going to be able to do anything about this coming apocalypse of human 1.0, life 1.0 on the planet. Guys, this isn't a joke. I know people like to laugh at me and point fingers and think it's funny, but it really isn't. I take this very seriously, and it really, on a nightly basis, I think about these things and about what we're going to do when we realize that there's no turning back with this. There's no stopping what they are doing. I mean, it is down to a microbial level now, things that we can't see, hear, taste, smell, touch. And unless we come up with some sort of, frequency-based protection organism, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I wish somebody in the field who had more smarts than me and this would step up and offer some solutions as to how to prevent ourselves from being transhumanized. So don't worry about it, people, because viewers will be able to see this documentary as it hits the screen soon. And prepare to be frightened and get your popcorn. And this is where we're going to start it tomorrow. A new dystopian device will warn you when AI is trying to impersonate an actual human. And it happens that AI will start turning against itself. Oh, we can only hope. All right, guys, we'll make sure you stick around because today, if you can even believe it, is Thursday. Miss Lonnie Clark is live up next. All kinds of live radio run with Game On and this week's Al Anthony and Intermedia Radio. All right, guys, have an awesome Thursday. I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Everybody, take care.
JJ Inc. from Against the Wall, and you're listening to UCY.TV.